everyone, it's nice to meet you. I'm Melanie and welcome to my new booktube channel. I know there's a booktube newbie tag going around, which I have seen some of those and I think they're great. I just thought I would come up with some of my own questions that I think you might be interested in learning about me and my book preferences. So let's get into it. Ooh, here he is. And here's my cat. His name is Picard. You will probably see a lot of him because he's very clingy a lot of the time. Are you gonna sit down, honey? Are you gonna sit down? My cat is now settled. So first question I came up with is, what do I want you to know about me? I am 29 years old. I am born and raised in LA. I went to film school in New York and came back to LA right after. I love cities. I'm a city girl at heart. I love traveling. I love listening to music. I used to work in television, like everyone in LA, and then switched over to gaming industry, which is where I'm currently in. I have read almost 40 books this year, which is crazy because it's the most I've ever read ever. I'm looking forward to reading more because we're only halfway through. I think last year I read around 45 total, so I'm definitely going to reach a higher book count this year for sure, as you can see. I have a cat, as you have met already. He's in my lap right now, but you can't see him. Next question, why am I starting a booktube channel? I really want a place to talk about the books that I'm reading, as I read a lot more than usual. A lot of my friends, they read, but not as much as I do, or not the same types of books, so I'd really like to find a community where I can meet people and share recommendations back and forth, where we can talk about the books we all like or don't like, because that's always fun too. I also don't want to bother people constantly about wanting to talk about books, because I always want to talk about books because I spend most of my time reading books outside of work. I am definitely not trying to ever honestly quit my full-time job. This is just going to be a hobby and a place where I can finally say what I want to say about books, because I do have hot takes sometimes. I need to rant and vent, and yeah, I need some space to do that as well. So the big question, what are my reading preferences? I would say the big one is definitely fantasy. I really like dark fantasy, even horror fantasy, but I'll read kind of anything, epic, high, low. Maybe not urban fantasy. I've tried that and I'll get to that in another video hopefully. Also, I read a lot of Asian inspired fantasy and some romantasy is in there as well. Dark academia is also a big fave of mine, though I haven't read as many as I would hope to, and I save those more for fall because, vibes. I definitely love weird girl lit. Any book about a weird girl, I love. I have a whole space on my shelf dedicated to them, and I definitely want to get more into weird girl lit. I do sprinkle in a bit of sci-fi here and there, fiction, literary fiction. I like anything with kind of an interesting story. As you can tell, I read most genres. There's not really anything I'm not willing to try. Also read occasional nonfiction, getting more into horror especially, because I like more fantasy horror, definitely getting into more classic horror like Stephen King. My boyfriend loves Stephen King, so there's a lot of books I need to get through that he wants me to read. A new recent one is weird graphic novels. Going back to I like messed up, kind of creepy, horror-y, dark themes, just in general in book theme. Graphic novels as well. I'm not a big graphic novel person and I've only recently read my first one. But yeah, I loved it. So I guess that's a new genre for me. I wouldn't really say that I am into the manhwa route. I'll never say never to a lot of things, but they're kind of too much and too hard for me to focus on occasionally. So what are my reading goals? I don't have a specific number of books that I'd like to read in a year. I want to keep it open-ended just in case, things happen or not. I don't want to put that pressure on myself either. But I do want to read bigger books and start reading more series. I know I get a little intimidated by bigger series and bigger books, because it takes more time, but I think it's important to get out of your comfort zone and try to beat your intimidation a little bit. One of the lifetime goals I do have is to read around the world. This is kind of a new thing that I decided to do. I also I've read about 5 books, 5 countries rather. so far, and they all happen to be female authors, so I decided I would read female authors around the world. So I'm excited to continue that, and I know that will take me forever, but you know, it's a lifetime goal, so I could be on my deathbed trying to finish my last book, and that's okay. Next question is, what type of content can you expect from me? You'll get kind of the typical content: book hauls, TBRs, monthly reading wrap-ups, maybe not really reading vlogs. I don't know if that's my thing yet or not, but we'll see. You never know what can happen in the future. Definitely some book recommendations, like seasonal content, you know, vibey stuff. And then maybe some light travel stuff. I like to travel a lot. I'm going to Africa at the end of July. And so I plan on reading one of my books in Botswana, which is where I'm going. I read around the world books, so we'll get a Botswana author in there. Also, bookshelf tours. I might do that next, so you can learn a little bit more about what I want to read and what's already on my shelves. I tend to only shelve books that I've read, so there's not that many yet, but obviously it's a growing hobby. So I also try not to buy too many books in advance. I like to keep a long list of TBR. I have a Notion page where it's kind of like my reading journal, but I like to only kind of buy books after I know that I plan on reading them, so I don't have a ton of space here. I have a ton of bookshelf space, so I like to keep my physical TBR pretty small in comparison to probably other people's you've seen. This one I thought you might be interested to learn about, my reading history. So how did I start reading and what has my journey been like? So as you might not be surprised, I started reading. My first ever book for fun was in the Twilight era. I was in middle school at the time, and you know, those books were super popular, and you know, still are with the movies and everything. I also picked up some Louise Renison, who did the Angus Thongs and Full Frontal Snogging series, which was really fun. And a little bit of Meg Cabot. There was like one book I would reread constantly. And then after that, I kind of took a break until around mid-time college. I saw the 50 Shades movie, don't judge me for this, and I was very surprised that it ended on a cliffhanger, and I didn't realize there was more, and I was, for some reason, so intrigued that I wanted to read what happened next. So the 50 Shades got me back into reading again, and it definitely got me back into romance specifically. Romance and dystopian kind of was what I focused on in college. Read, you know, Divergent, Fifth Wave, The Selection, you know, those very popular, you know, at that time. I did also try out my first fantasy with the Red Queen series. I think I only read the first 2 books though, and then everything kind of shifted to all things romance for a while. I would read kind of Abby Glines, Cassie West, Denise Gerber Swank, Erin Watt, kind of older authors at that time. Not they weren't old, but authors that were popular back in the day a little bit. I stopped reading around 2020. You know, a lot of things are happening. I got a little more into music and fashion, you know, kind of shifted away. Got into huge deep holes on YouTube, not on booktube. And then I started back up again in 2021 with a little more fantasy, reading some popular series like Crave and ACOTAR. I only read the first book in each series, and ACOTAR, honestly, I don't really expect to continue. I didn't really see a drive. I know that's a popular one right now though. And then more romance for sure. 2022, I started shifting more into fantasy and away from romance. Kind of more romantasy, you know? Everyone makes that shift kind of because they're, you know, you get romance with more stakes and, you know, cooler things happening in unique worlds. And then I met my boyfriend, who was a big reader. He inspired me to read as well as booktube. So I started to collect books, physical books. I was a big ebook reader before. That's mainly what I read from. And now I prefer reading physical copies, though I still do use ebooks occasionally. I'm not a big audiobook person. Sometimes I'll do it, like classics. A lot of the time I'll do it just because it's easier to follow more quickly. And then mid 2023 is kind of when I started reading as much as I do now, like 5 to 8 books a month. I thought you might be interested to know what booktubers I watch and get a lot of recommendations from. I watch so many, so this is not a comprehensive list. But my first ever booktuber was Carrie Can Read. I was following her other blogging channel and found her reading channel, and was very intrigued with what she was reading, and that got me into a lot more fantasy. I also follow Reagan from Peruse Project a lot, Leonie from the Book of Leo. Jack Edwards is a more newer one, giving me more fiction. Books and Lala is fun for horror as well. I definitely need to diversify the booktubers that I watch, so please send me your recommendations for anyone that suits my preferences or that you think have great vibes or anything, because I don't always necessarily watch YouTubers that we have the same taste in books, because it's fun to see what other people think. One question you're probably very interested to know is, what am I currently reading? I am currently reading Grace of Kings. This is one of those chunky series and long books that I was intimidated to read, but I finally started and I am absolutely loving it. I'm around 2/3 of the way through, hopefully finish in the next couple days. It's around 600 pages, so it'll take me longer than usual, but very excited to continue the series as well. And last question finally, what are my current faves? I'll give you 3 for right now. I don't want to spoil anything for the future. One I read at the end of last year. It's 5th Season by N.K. Jemisin. I absolutely love her writing this book. The structure, so interesting, and I have never read something like this before, and so I definitely want to read more from her. And the whole series is great. The next one is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. She's only written 2 books and a short story collection, and I absolutely am obsessed with her writing. I will read anything she writes, and I want her to write a lot more, but there was about 20 years between the 2 books, so I don't have high hopes. But this book was a very fun early 1800s period piece with light fantasy and magic. Just very fun writing and characters. It's hefty for sure. It took me around 6 months to finish because I was reading a lot of other things in between, but very highly recommend. It's worth the almost 900 pages that it is. And the third book is Library at Mount Char by Scott Hawkins. I love weird books, as I said, and this one's definitely by far one of the weirdest books I have read in a fantasy setting. So if you like weird books and don't care about violence or gore, check trigger warnings for this one for sure, but highly recommend. And that is the end of my booktube newbie tag. So thank you for tuning in. Look forward to seeing what comes of this, and thank you for watching. Have a good rest of your day. Bye.